this year I've realised I have to admit defeat and finally buy something a little bit more practical. The cars I'm driving around in at the moment are, let's face it, a little bit silly. The Lamborghini Gallardo Superleggera LP570-4 Edizione Tecnica, my R8 GT Spider, and I've also got a 370Z Nismo that's been off the road for a while, which is a whole other story. But I also have a Mazda RX-8, and having that car has been quite a pleasure and actually has made me realise that it's actually quite useful having a little bit of boot space for a change.
Especially now we're doing a lot of YouTube together, sometimes it's really nice to just have something where you can open the boot, chuck your stuff in without having to play Tetris every single time we need to go anywhere.
Now I am selling the R8 GT Spider in order to fund the opportunity to spend more time making YouTube so that I can grow it into an actual real business and get to hang out with James even more often. I know he's excited about that. And I also don't want to keep the RX-8 because originally I bought that as a favour to my son because he spent 9 months trying to find the right car, found the right car, then 3 months later found one even better. So I took that off his hands while my 370 Nismo was off the road. But that is going to be going, and I do need something very practical, or not too practical, but fun at the same time.
And the good news is that in terms of practicality, you have set the bar joyously low. Because even in the world of supercars, the R8 GT and the Gallardo, they're not particularly spacious. We can get one camera bag in there and that's it.
You can make it work.
Yeah, and you did when we went over to Austria last year, when I took my Aston Martin V8 Vantage and you took the R8 GT. And both of you did get over there, but you looked a little bit second-hand when you got out of that car, it has to be said.
I was a bit broken.
Now, on the other side of things, you have made my life a little bit difficult because your cars are so very fun. However, I have been able to decipher something of a pattern in your buying habits. You love a good engine.
Yeah.
More accurately, you love a decent, high-revving, naturally aspirated lump. Because the 370Z, that's got it. You've got the RX-8, I mean, that is as crazy as engines get. And then, of course, you've got a pair of sort of the same V10, well, it is the same V10 in both the R8 and the Gallardo. And of course, every petrol head out there knows that for anybody who wants something fun yet practical, there's a blindingly obvious answer: the BMW M3. However, nearly every single time I send Ant a link to a BMW of any description, he says, no, 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 can't do it. Why is that?
Look, when I was growing up, BMWs had a bit of a reputation. And I feel like I'd almost have to get some of those rainbow coloured lenses that you have on some of your sunglasses and some short sleeve shirts in order to feel like I was, you know, doing the BMW stereotype justice. However, there is another unfortunate BMW stereotype, especially with M3s and the very powerful ones, especially ones that you then go and modify, which I would inevitably do. And that is some of the, let's just say some of the interesting, spicy car meet crowds that like to do interesting things with their cars that involve tyre smoking.
Yeah, it is the European answer to the Mustang in a lot of ways, isn't it?
Except, yeah, usually you don't bin it quite so much because the suspension's actually decent. But this is part of the issue for me, and I almost like, every time I see one of those folks doing something silly in their BMW or pulling up alongside me at the lights while I'm in my Lambo, revving and wanting to race me, which I am absolutely not going to do, then yeah, it just puts me off. It makes me think I don't want to be put in the same category as those people. But I think that's unfair on the car.
Yeah, and do you know what though? I do totally get that. And it's one of the few reasons that I've never bought a Mercedes AMG C63, because I've driven loads of them, and they are also, like M3s, owned by lots of really good people who are genuine enthusiasts. But it's also impossible to ignore the fact that they are associated with a particular crowd that like to do sometimes unwise things with their cars in unsuitable places. But you really shouldn't hold that against the car, and I think maybe we have a civic responsibility to not just deny ourselves these pleasures in life because of these other people, but also to prove really that these stereotypes aren't necessarily so true. And I happen to think that, yeah, sure, particularly when I was growing up back in the 90s, your BMW was your instant go-to of the motorway dickhead. But those people migrated to Audi, and today they all own Teslas. So, I think maybe it's time to revisit the M3. And I gotta be honest, this is one of these cars where every time I look at it, I just think, why haven't they gone up in price more? So, let me lay down the facts for you, and then we can see if that translates into the experience that I would like to think it does. So what we've got here is the E90 generation of M3. More specifically, this is the E92, which is the coupe. It's the one people tend to think of. You could also get the car as the E90, which is the four-door saloon, and also the E93, which is the convertible. All of them, though, have the same engine up front. It's the BMW S65 V8. 4 litres, naturally aspirated, and has a red line of just shy of 8,500 RPM. 420 horsepower, 295 pounds-feet of torque, that's 400 newton meters, a top speed limited to 155, actual over 180, 0 to 60 time that's fairly decent, and you had a pair of pretty good gearboxes with this car as well. The majority of them come with the 7-speed DCT, which was new for this generation of car and actually is pretty good. I think it's better than the Porsche PDK of the day. But when they were launched way back in 2006, they came first exclusively with this 6-speed manual. And there aren't too many cars out there you can find that have a naturally aspirated, high-revving V8 engine and a manual gearbox that are daily drivable and still a little bit special, but you can buy now for less than £20,000, and that's a good one.
And that price really surprised me because it's the only M3 that they put a V8 into, and it's the last of the naturally aspirated M3s. So I was expecting it to be, what, 30 grand, but no.
No. If you want a really high-end, late limited edition one, you can spend that, but you can also have a really good one like this. Crazily, the manuals don't even command a silly premium like they're doing a lot of other stuff for not much money. Thing is, though, what's it like to drive?
I think we'll have to find out. All of the revs.
Oh, yes.
Well, I can tell you, James, it's very good.
I knew you liked this car. See, I've known this man for a good few years now, maybe more than either of us would care to admit. And when we go into our drive-bys, which is what we do first to get out a bit of time behind the wheel, I can tell straight away whether he's gelling with a car or not. And I could tell before we even got to the drive-bys, I think you were building a bit of a rapport with this car.
Now, there are a couple of things I don't like about this car, which I'd like to get out of the way first. The first thing is actually this steering wheel. Now, this one happens to have an aftermarket steering wheel on it, which is a little thicker in girth than the standard version, I am told. I haven't tried it, so I'm going to have to trust James on this. So, Andy, you must have rather large hands. Congratulations, sir. My hands aren't quite as big, so I find it just a little bit on the larger side. However, the other thing that I don't like, which you can't really do anything about, is the angle of the steering wheel. Now, I find with a lot older cars, they tend to have an angle forward at the top steering wheel. This isn't terrible, but it is just slightly more than I prefer. It was one of those first impression type things that went away pretty quickly. But what I do like about the steering wheel is actually the feedback it gives you. It's a surprising balance between just enough weight but also just enough feel. Many cars that I don't like a lot tend to be the ones that have a very, very light steering wheel. They're trying to make your life way too easy, and I feel that takes away something from the feel you get from the road in the car, whereas this, it's just pretty perfect for me. I couldn't fault it in any way, shape or form, especially if I was using it as a car that I wanted to drive every day and didn't want every drive to feel like I was having an arms day in the gym.
Yeah, I found that with my V8 Vantage. When you're having fun, that really hefty steering was great, but then when you're just driving around town or you're on the motorway, it actually can get quite tiring.
Yeah. My 370Z's a bit like that. It's a little bit heavy, and that's partly due to some modifications that I've done to the car. And it's also a little bit twitchy. So when you're on the motorway, you're constantly like, you know, doing this with a heavy steering wheel, a bit like Caterham, but only heavier. The other thing that I wasn't a big fan of with this car, actually, to be honest, is the styling. It's very understated. I know you can fix that. I know you can put all sorts of silly spoilers and all sorts of Nürburgring modifications on the car, and that is exactly the kind of thing that I would like to do. But I would probably have to ask you to help me not to do that, because all it would do is add loads of drag, make the fuel economy on the motorways even worse, which is kind of what this car would be for, a motorway muncher or an autobahn eater, I don't know, whatever the equivalent is. And the interior, I think, really just lets the car down. When you think about how much the car was at the time and what Mercedes and Audi were doing with their interiors at the time, giving it a little bit of class, a little bit more.
The RS4's interior is a lot nicer. You get the carbon fibre, you get the leather bucket seats and stuff like that. And you can have nicer interiors in these. You can get extended leather, which does lift it quite a bit. You can have a bit of colour as well. But most of them are as you see here. But one of the things that to me appeals about the M3 for you is that what you have here is a fabulous base for a car. Now this one isn't entirely standard, it's only got a couple of subtle modifications, one of which you've already mentioned, the steering wheel, which has been done by Royal Steering Wheels, who are very well known in the BMW world, and I know that extra padding is an option that they offer to customers. It's more like the modern BMW wheels, but like you, I don't like it. The other stuff though is a modification to the back box, so it's the original exhaust from start to finish, but they just open up the rear end and just cover up a few of the perforations to give you a little bit more volume but retain the character of the sound. And it's got an E-Venturi carbon fiber intake which looks spectacular and gives you a bit more intake noise. Even E-Venturi themselves will tell you it gives you no more power at all. It's just for noise and looks, and it's expensive, but it's cool. You were saying though about, you know, sticking wings and stuff like that on it, but I think what you maybe enjoy doing is just finding the right set of wheels, getting it at that right height, getting a little bit of stance on it. The only problem you're going to find is you'd want a white one, which in BMW land you're talking about mineral white, and it's fairly rare. It does command a bit of a premium, but there's so much you can do with this to make it your own and make it a bit more ant without going over the top. And no matter what you do, you've still got loads of room in the back seats. I can fit myself in the back here nicely and happily, and you got a huge boot as well, and it's still a fun car to drive.
Do the back seats fold down?
No, they don't. That's something they changed for this generation because, fun fact for you, in the E46 M3, if you optioned the folding rear seats, the torsional rigidity goes down by 1/3.
So what I could do is just remove the seats, put in a roll cage, and I'll be good.
Yeah, what you do, there's actually, and again, this is great, there's off the shelf, I had this in my E92, which was a track car. There are companies that do a kit which basically remove the back seats and give you a flat load area.
Nice.
And it's like, you know, hundreds of pounds. It's really, really affordable because it's not particularly complicated.
And I will admit, when I found out I was going to be driving this car, I did have a little bit of a look around to see what kinds of things you could get. And yes, there's a few nice little splitters for the front, a little bit of carbon decoration, maybe a little lip on the rear boot as a little mini spoiler. I could do that whole OEM plus kind of thing with this car. And
like you've done with the Nissan.
Like I've done with the Nissan, yeah, exactly. Keep it OEM plus, like maybe give it that look like if there was a special version that wasn't a competition or CSL or anything like that, but maybe some other version. The SNT edition, there we go. Sports and touring version. But no, absolutely. But look, I've talked about a couple of things I didn't like, but there is one thing that I think anyone would absolutely have to be insane to not like, and that's this engine. It's fantastic. Now, there is a button down here labelled power, and well, it doesn't really do anything, does it?
No. In the M5 and M6, the V10 ones, that actually does a lot. It gives you another 100 horsepower. In this, it's just the equivalent of the old sport button, so it just makes the throttle more sensitive. That's it.
And I have to admit, as it was off for a moment there, now that it's back on, I actually prefer it. I've always preferred that slightly more linear throttle, that almost like a cable-like experience, but maybe not completely like a cable that starts to get a bit loose and saggy after a while. And that's kind of what that non-power version feels like. There's like a little bit of play before anything happens.
Yeah.
Which you want if you're in stop-start traffic, because you don't want to be jerking forward, you know, especially in a manual. because then that's really embarrassing. But the sport mode or power mode for me is the preferred setting. That's just been my preference. I think this is one of the things between me and James is he likes suspension that's a little bit more sensible and throttle input that just doesn't require a great deal of effort. Whereas for me, I feel like I want these things to be a bit more harder to work with, and that's good. That's a good thing for this car, because so far this car has been absolutely brilliant. The handling, the way it takes the corners, the turn-in, very little body roll, but just the right amount for you to get the sense of where the weight is moving on the car. It's brilliant. And I've always said that when cars are too good, I start to lose interest. I get a bit bored. I think I like a little bit of drama in my life. Only with my cars, not with anything else.
The other thing with this car as well is it doesn't have the optional adaptive dampers, which is why there's a blank button down here which would be marked EDC. And I think this is proof you don't need it.
No.
This is a really nice suspension setup. Like, yeah, it's a little on the firm side, but it's not crashy, it's not horrible. Like, this is a really good thing. And also, it is going to be a little bit cheaper to maintain. Plus, if you do want to put some coilovers or something on, you're not then chucking your expensive suspension in the bin.
Well, yes, you say it's quite firm, but it's not really. It's soft. I drove here in the Superleggera this morning, and that is like driving without suspension.
Yeah, that's like being dragged behind a car.
Yeah, so this feels like a Bentley to me right now. This is quite a bit of luxury, but no, it is quite firm. It is quite firm. I think for most people, this would probably be perfect. It's got the right amount of firmness that you get the feel through the road, but it takes the bumps in a way that doesn't feel crashy or anything like that. It's just a nice, gentle, lump on the road that you've just gone over. I think this suspension is actually set up perfectly. I wouldn't want it any different. I wouldn't want the complication of an active system, like you say. But I also really do appreciate the fact that this is a daily usable amount of firmness. Probably about as soft as I would want it, but probably about as firm as most people would take it.
Yeah, also, you've not really got much overhang at the front. The rider height is sensible, so if you're going to have to deal with things like speed humps, multi-story car parks, it'll do all of that. You wouldn't need to add lift like I know you did with the 370 because you ruined it, and all that sort of stuff. It just, as a package all round, it's kind of hard to argue with. And the Merc's got the sexier engine for sure. The Audi's very, very sure-footed, but I think not as good to look at, and certainly, not quite as much zing as this. I think it just feels like a little, and it's only a little bit, but just a little bit safer, partly because the all-wheel drive, the extra weight and everything else. The RS4 of the day carries another like 150 kilos or something. Now this is not exactly light, this is 1600 kilos, so it is heavier than the old one, but the manual here also is the lightest of them. It's about 40 to 50 kilos lighter than a DCT equipped one.
There you go, so that would give me some extra bragging rights at the pub. Look, I think that my experience of this car so far has been not what I was expecting. And I think a part of me would say it's not what I was hoping either, because I'm starting to like it. Okay, I started to like it very quickly as soon as we started driving it. And the question for me is it enough to help me overcome my prejudice against these cars and their stereotypical drivers? And I think there's one last little thing that I need to do before I can really truly answer that question. I need to go for a few more bends, and then I think I'll know. Okay, James, you've convinced me. I like it. I like it a lot. But for me, I don't know if I could go out and buy one right now. I think I would have to try a couple of other cars. One of them is an RS4, and I know that you've got one on its way.
Yep, we can sort you out with that, no problem at all.
And I'm not sure if I'd want to try the AMG, because I've just never been a huge fan of the Mercedes.
Yeah, the interior of those actually also is a step down from these. That era of Merc, it's not as good as you think it should be in the C-Class. It's nicer in the E and of course the S, but yeah, the C's a bit cheap, scratchy plastic type thing.
Yeah, no, I don't know if that would be for me. Plus, I think BMW's always had more of an emphasis on the drivability of the car, and that for me is a big deal. I mean, the handling on this is fantastic. It just actually feels too good. And thanks to the few little things that are its imperfections, that gives it enough character for me to say that I think I might be able to actually fall in love with one of these. So I'm going to be going and looking in Auto Trader, and if you watch the Radiator Arms podcast, where me, James and Will talk all things cars, then you may find out exactly which one I am considering.
All right, everybody, thanks for watching. And again, a big thank you to Andy for lending us his car. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.